I was raised hearing the stories of the previous generation to mine, that which was called the greatest generation. I was born in the mid-1970s, and so my dad was dealing with the Vietnam War, but his dad was dealing with World War II. In fact, my grandfather served, as did so many others, in World War II. They were part of that greatest generation. I grew up hearing stories about young men and women who dealt with something that was happening on a global scale, having come out of the Great Depression, dealing with a world war, coming home from that world war after tremendous loss, understanding a country that would mobilize itself around a cause to be victorious over a dictator who was doing his best to take over the world. I heard stories of not only that, but then those young men and women coming home and rebuilding a country, turning their country into what we appreciate as America today. I heard these stories, as did so many of you. I've learned these stories and I've retold these stories, and I've looked back fondly to the days of men and women who would do the hard work of pushing forward when it seemed that everything in the world was against them. Throughout my life, I've had moments in my life where difficult things have happened. We could talk about various economic crises and issues and wars that have happened over the course of my life, but nothing quite on the global scale of what our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers experienced during World War II and the Great Depression. We now find ourselves in a situation that, although it cannot be exactly likened to the circumstances of the 30s and 40s, is something that is indeed a global crisis. Not just an economic crisis, but a health crisis where real people are really dealing with the health fallout of this virus, and real people are losing their lives, where family members are burying their loved ones because of something that was beyond their control. We are dealing with fear, perhaps at a level that we have not seen in generations. Fear not only of the health issues, but also the economic issues. We've taken both aspects of what it is exactly people fear, we put those together, and now people around the world, young people and old, are afraid for their future, their health future, their physical future, their jobs and their economic security, and because of the actions taken by the government to keep the economy afloat, the security, at least economically, of their children and their children's children. What a time to be alive. There are moments in history that are written about and moments in history that are reflected on, and we happen to be standing in the middle of one of those moments. Depending on what your role in the world is right now, this has impacted you differently. Perhaps you are dealing with the economic impacts. Maybe you're dealing with the health impacts. Many folks are just at home and trying to figure out how to be with families in ways they've never been with their families before. I know a lot of folks, at least initially, and this was true of my home as well, when we were told to stay at home, didn't exactly know what that looked like, and we had to adjust to different schedules and everyone being together for the first time in a long time. We had to adjust to the things that were changing around us, and even our shopping habits and our eating habits. All of that was changing, and we were changing with it and didn't know exactly what to do, and probably, at least in the first week, spent way too much time in our pajamas on the couch, eating a lot of chips. But over the last few weeks, as we've realized this is our normal, at least for the coming few weeks, we've gotten back to work and we've gotten in routines and we've started to accomplish, and I feel like I, at least, have been able to do things that I've been putting off for a long time and accomplish some things that I was really hopeful I would get accomplished. It's been a very productive time for me. It's moments like this, however, that really tell the story of what we're all about. I look back to the greatest generation. I consider the things that they endured, that they dealt with, and how they dealt with them. They went to war, they restored peace and order and freedom, and they came back and built a country. That's what they did. I think the question, particularly about our generation and how you define that, but those who are living right now that are working and making things happen, the question could be asked, what would they do if they found themselves in a global situation I think most of us would hope we'd act like our grandparents and great-grandparents, but we just don't know, because you don't know until you find yourself in the middle of that situation. I'll tell you this. Although it was a shaky start, I've been very comforted by what I've seen in my fellow Americans. I'm in a position where I can control my environment to some extent, and I can decide what I work on and how hard I work, and I'm thankful that it's been productive. But a lot of folks are not in the same situation as me. In fact, a lot of people are trying to hang on to their businesses. They're concerned that they're not going to be able to stay open or continue to employ the people that are in their employ. There are folks who aren't sure what their work will look like or what their family situation will look like, because things have changed so much. I come from the church world, and so many churches have asked the question, how do we do this? How do we continue to minister in our communities, and how do we continue to communicate the Bible when we can't meet together? All of these questions were asked, and there was a moment of panic, but people have mobilized to do great things, innovative things, creative things, productive things, helpful things in a very, very difficult moment in history. As I observe churches trying to figure this out, churches have used technology in ways they never did before. They're serving their communities in ways they never would have even considered before. They're doing it now because they have to. They're rising to the occasion. Small businesses have changed the way they do business. Local coffee shops are presenting curbside service for the first time. Small businesses that are so tied to people coming to them have figured out and innovated their way into how they can serve those who use their business virtually from a distance. They're making it happen. It's been amazing to watch just how creative people will be when they're willing in the middle of a crisis to lean in instead of pulling back. You see, here's the temptation when you find yourself in a difficult moment. The temptation is to lean back, look for something to hang on to, and say, I hope I get through this quickly. Although I'm sure many folks are doing that right now, what I've seen the people in my life and in my community, in my world, what I've seen them do is lean in and say, I hope I can get some help from some other places, but I'm not going to depend on that help. I'm going to do what I need to do to not survive, but thrive through this moment. If there's been one big takeaway in the last several weeks for me, personally, and the one I continue to try to communicate to my kids, and the one I'll be talking about probably until I die, the one big takeaway from me is this. When you hit those moments of crisis, know that your life will largely be judged on how you dealt with that moment. And that instead of simply hanging on and pulling back, you need to lean in and accomplish great things. We're going to get through this, and I'm excited to see on the other side how some of the innovations of the last several weeks will continue to play out and develop business and homes and churches across the country. What an amazing time to be alive.